Deagol. Deagol is a stoor, one of the three breeds of hobbits. Deagol plays a crucial role in the history of the One Ring, although his appearance in the story is brief. Deagol is fishing on the river Anduin with his friend and relative, Smeagol, who later becomes known as Gollum. Deagol is the one who actually discovers the One Ring after it slips off the finger of Isildur, who was killed nearby in an earlier age. The ring had lain lost in the river's waters until Deagol's fateful find. His discovery of the ring leads directly to his demise. Smeagol, immediately captivated by the ring's allure, demands that Deagol give it to him as a birthday present. When Deagol refuses, Smeagol flies into a rage and strangles him to death. This act marks the beginning of Smeagol's transformation into Gollum and sets the stage for the ring's corrupting influence to unfold throughout the story. Deagol's death is significant not only for its direct consequences, giving rise to Gollum and the latter's obsession with the ring. Saruman. Saruman, the White, is the leader of the Astari, a group of wizards sent to Middle-earth to help combat the resurgence of Sauron. He is the head of the Order and the White Council, residing in the Tower of Orthanc at Isengard. Over time, Saruman's ambitions and his study of dark magic lead him to desire power for himself. He seeks the One Ring and allies with Sauron, albeit deceitfully, planning to betray him. Saruman's treachery involves the creation of an army of Uruk-hai to wage war against the free peoples of Middle-earth, specifically targeting Rohan. In the film adaptation directed by Peter Jackson, Saruman's downfall begins in the Two Towers when his army is defeated at the Battle of Helm's Deep. His fate is sealed in the extended edition of The Return of the King, which portrays his death, though this scene does not appear in the theatrical release. After being confronted and abandoned by Gandalf and the others at Isengard, he is killed by Grima Wormtongue on the Tower of Orthanc. Wormtongue slashes Saruman's throat after being abused and belittled by him one too many times. Saruman then falls from the tower, landing on a spike of the machinery below, marking a grim end to his quest for power. Grima Wormtongue. Grima Wormtongue serves as the chief advisor to King Theoden of Rohan, but he is secretly in league with Saruman, manipulating the king and weakening Rohan from within as part of Saruman's broader plan to conquer the region. Grima earns his nickname Wormtongue due to his sly and deceitful nature, as well as his ability to twist words and exert influence over Theoden. His manipulations contribute significantly to the deteriorating condition of the king, both mentally and physically, until Gandalf's intervention frees Theoden from Grima's influence. In the film adaptation, Grima's role is portrayed with a strong emphasis on his betrayal and the personal conflict he faces as he struggles with his actions and their consequences. His loyalty to Saruman leads to his eventual downfall. After Saruman is defeated at Isengard, Grima accompanies him, still as his servant. In the extended edition of The Return of the King, Grima ultimately kills Saruman by stabbing him in a moment of anger and desperation before being shot to death by the Rohirrim who witness his act. In the original books, Grima's end comes differently. After Saruman's fall, he follows Saruman to the Shire, where he participates in the industrial spoilage of the Hobbit's homeland. His death occurs during the Scouring of the Shire, where he is killed by Hobbit archers after he finally turns on Saruman and slits his throat, only to be immediately shot down. This death underscores Grima's tragic arc, a man twisted by his own choices and loyalties, ultimately leading to his ruin and the stark consequences of manipulation and betrayal. Madril. In the movies, Madril serves as a lieutenant and a trusted aide to Faramir. He is depicted as a loyal and capable Gondorian soldier involved in the defense of Osgiliath against the forces of Mordor. Madril's role primarily revolves around providing counsel to Faramir and assisting in the strategic decisions surrounding the defense and eventual retreat from Osgiliath as the city comes under increasing pressure from Sauron's armies. Madril's death occurs in The Return of the King during the intense battle scenes at Osgiliath. He is wounded by orc forces as they overrun the city and then brutally stabbed to death by Gothmog while lying on the ground. Damrod. In the movies, Damrod is portrayed as a ranger of Ithilien, serving under Faramir, son of Denethor and brother to Boromir. He plays a role in the guerrilla warfare tactics used against the forces of Mordor invading the region. Damrod assists Faramir in capturing Frodo, Sam, and Gollum, who are trying to pass through Ithilien on their way to Mordor. Damrod's death occurs in The Return of the King during the battle scenes involving the defense of Osgiliath. He is killed by the legions led by Gothmog, the lieutenant of Minas Morgul, as they invade and ultimately overrun the city. Denethor. Denethor, too, is a significant character in The Lord of the Rings, serving as the steward of Gondor during the War of the Ring. He is the father of Boromir and Faramir, and rules from Minas Tirith, the capital of Gondor, in the absence of a king. Denethor is portrayed as a proud and increasingly despairing leader whose judgment becomes clouded by his use of a palantir, one of the Seeing Stones. This device, unbeknownst to him, is manipulated by Sauron to feed him misleading visions that exacerbate his despair and paranoia. These visions primarily focus on the overwhelming power of Sauron's forces and his son Boromir's death, which drives him further into hopelessness. In Peter Jackson's film adaptation, Denethor's character is further dramatized, emphasizing his madness and erratic behavior, especially after the death of Boromir and the perceived worthlessness of his remaining son, Faramir, whom he unfairly blames for Boromir's demise. His grief and inability to cope with the encroaching threat from Mordor lead to a series of poor decisions, including sending Faramir on a near-suicidal mission to retake Osgiliath. Denethor's tragic end comes as Minas Tirith is under siege. Overcome by madness and grief, he attempts to burn himself and his still-living son Faramir on a funeral pyre, believing defeat is imminent. In the films, he dies by setting himself on fire and running, ablaze, from the high levels of Minas Tirith to his death. In Tolkien's text, he dies on the pyre within the tombs of the stewards. His death marks the end of his line as the ruling stewards of Gondor, paving the way for the return of the true king, Aragorn, who would restore the throne of Gondor. Chief of the Mumakil. In the film, the chief of the Mumakil is depicted commanding the Oliphants, or Mumakil, massive elephant-like creatures used by the Haradrim in battle. These creatures are brought into the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, where they cause tremendous destruction among the ranks of Gondor and its allies. The chief of the Mumakil is portrayed as a formidable warrior, leading his troops and riding one of the giant beasts. His presence on the battlefield highlights the diversity and scale of Sauron's forces, demonstrating the vast reach of the Dark Lord's influence and the varied peoples and creatures under his command. He killed riders of Rohan in the battle while riding a Mumak, but eventually met his demise at the hands of Eomer, who hurled a spear into his chest. Snowmane. Snowmane is particularly known as the Mount of King Theoden of Rohan. Snowmane is a part of the rich tapestry of Rohan, a kingdom where horses are highly valued and central to their culture. Snowmane plays a crucial role during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the great conflict outside the walls of Minas Tirith in the Return of the King. As Theoden leads a heroic charge against the forces of Mordor, Snowmane is struck by a black dart thrown by the Lord of the Nazgul, also known as the WitchKing of Angmar. The horse, in pain and fright, falls, crushing Theoden beneath him. This tragic moment is significant as it marks the death of Theoden, a key moment of loss and transition for Rohan. Theoden's death leads to Eowyn's confrontation with the Witch King, as she defends her fallen uncle, leading to one of the most iconic scenes in the trilogy. Theoden. Theoden is a pivotal character in The Lord of the Rings, serving as the King of Rohan during much of the trilogy. His reign is marked by initial decline and manipulation, followed by a dramatic resurgence and heroic stand. Theoden's character arc is one of the most compelling in the series, showcasing themes of redemption, courage, and leadership. When introduced in the Two Towers, Theoden is under the spell of Saruman, influenced through his deceitful advisor, Grima Wormtongue. This manipulation saps Theoden's strength and will, rendering him an old and feeble ruler, out of touch with the needs of his kingdom as it faces the growing threat of war. His transformation begins with the arrival of Gandalf, who frees him from Grima's influence. This moment of liberation is dramatically portrayed both in the books and the films, where Theoden emerges as a strong and decisive leader, revitalized and ready to defend his land. Theoden's leadership is further demonstrated during the Battle of Helm's Deep, where he shows great valor and tactical acumen, inspiring his people to a hard-fought victory against overwhelming odds. His heroism reaches its peak at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, described poetically in The Return of the King. Riding into battle, Theoden leads a critical charge that temporarily turns the tide of the conflict. However, he meets his end on this battlefield, mortally wounded by the Witch King of Angmar. His death is a significant moment in the story, leading to pivotal developments, including Eowyn's confrontation with the Witch King and the eventual rallying of the Rohirrim by his nephew Eomer, who succeeds him as king. The Witch King of Angmar. The Witch King first appears in history as the founder of the Kingdom of Angmar in the northern regions of Middle-earth around the year 1300 of the Third Age. His sole mission was to weaken the northern kingdoms of Arnor, which he effectively did, culminating in the destruction of the North Kingdom. His title, the Witch King of Angmar, comes from his rule over this region and his mastery of sorcery and fear. His power is not only in physical might, but also in instilling terror, a tool he uses effectively throughout the series. He is prophesied to fall not by the hand of man, which leads to his overconfidence in battle. His end comes when his physical form is destroyed after Éowyn strikes him with a sword in a pivotal moment, fulfilling the prophecy that he would not fall by the hand of man, highlighting Tolkien's theme of unexpected heroes and the power of prophecy within the narrative framework. Murgash. In the movies, Murgash is an orc who meets his end during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. In the extended scenes of the film The Return of the King, Aragorn encounters Murgash at the Harland, the southern harbor of Minas Tirith. This confrontation occurs as part of the larger battle sequences where the forces of Gondor and their allies are trying to repel the attacking armies of Sauron. Aragorn decapitates Murgash in this battle, which is in line with the intense and brutal combat styles depicted throughout the film series. Gothmog. Gothmog is portrayed as the lieutenant of Minas Morgul and a commander of Sauron's armies during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. Gothmog is an orc and serves a significant role in the siege of Minas Tirith. In the climactic scenes of the film, Gothmog's demise comes at the hands of Aragorn and Gimli during the intense combat that marks the battle's conclusion. Initially, Aragorn cuts off Gothmog's arm, which is followed by Gimli stabbing him, and finally, Aragorn delivers the killing blow. Guritz. In the films, Guritz is depicted with a distinctive spiked helmet and serves as a commander among the orc forces. During the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, Guritz is involved in the defense against the charging forces of the Army of the Dead, who are summoned by Aragorn to fulfill their oath and aid in the battle against Sauron's forces. In the chaos that ensues as the spectral army sweeps over the battlefield, Guritz attempts to flee but is ultimately killed by Gimli, who strikes him down with an axe. Gorbag. Gorbag is one of the orcs from Minas Morgul, and his character becomes significant in the story when he and another orc, Shagrat, discover Frodo after he has been paralyzed by the giant spider, Shelob. Gorbag's death occurs when he is on the verge of killing Frodo. Sam, who had been hiding and believed Frodo to be dead, intervenes just in time. In a desperate bid to save his friend, Sam stabs Gorbag from behind, thus preventing him from harming Frodo. The Mouth of Sauron. The Mouth of Sauron serves as the lieutenant of Barad-dûr and a messenger of Sauron, skilled in manipulation and deceit. In the film, his role is brief but memorable. He meets with Gandalf, Aragorn, and the other leaders of the Free Peoples outside the Black Gate of Mordor, taunting them with claims that Frodo has been captured and tortured, and presenting Frodo's personal items as proof. His taunting is designed to crush the hope of the gathered armies and negotiate their surrender. However, during his monologue, Aragorn, in a decisive and controversial moment not present in the book, decapitates the Mouth of Sauron, signifying a rejection of any terms that Sauron offers. This action is a significant deviation from Tolkien's depiction, where the Mouth of Sauron retreats back into Mordor after delivering his message. This change in the film was intended to enhance the drama and illustrate Aragorn's resolve and leadership in the face of enemy provocations. Gollum. Gollum, originally known as Sméagol, is one of the most complex characters in The Lord of the Rings. He was once a hobbit-like creature, but was corrupted by the One Ring, which he possessed for centuries after acquiring it on his birthday. The ring granted him an unnaturally long life, but also deformed his body and mind, turning him into the creature known as Gollum, named after the guttural gurgling sound he makes. His life is a tragic story of obsession and corruption. Gollum's existence is dominated by his consuming desire to reclaim the ring, which he refers to as my precious. This obsession leads him to track Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee across Middle-earth, as they attempt to destroy the ring in the fires of Mount Doom. Gollum's death comes at the very climax of the story. In a desperate attempt to reclaim the ring from Frodo at Mount Doom, Gollum attacks Frodo and manages to seize the ring by biting off Frodo's finger. In his ecstatic triumph, he loses his balance and falls into the fiery chasm of Mount Doom, thus destroying both himself and the ring. His death is both tragic and pivotal, as it inadvertently leads to the fulfillment of the quest to destroy the ring and the ultimate defeat of Sauron. Sauron. Sauron is the primary antagonist in The Lord of the Rings, embodying the ultimate source of evil in Middle-earth. Originally a Maya named Mairon, which signifies the Admirable, he was corrupted by the first Dark Lord Morgoth and transformed into Sauron, meaning the Abhorred. His character is driven by the desire for power and control, and he crafts the One Ring to dominate the other rings of power and their bearers. In the narrative, Sauron does not appear directly in physical form during the events of The Lord of the Rings, as he has not regained his full strength. Instead, he exerts his will through the ring and his influence from his fortress in Mordor, using his vast armies and agents like the Nazgul. Sauron's presence is depicted symbolically by the ever-watchful Eye of Sauron, which seeks the ring and attempts to crush any opposition. Sauron's defeat is ultimately caused by the destruction of the One Ring. As Frodo Baggins and Samwise Gamgee reach Mount Doom, Gollum seizes the ring and falls into the volcano's fiery lava, thus inadvertently destroying the ring. With the ring's destruction, Sauron's power is also obliterated, leading to his final downfall. His physical form is completely annihilated, and he is reduced to a powerless spirit, unable to take shape again or influence the world as he had before. This defeat marks the end of the Third Age and the beginning of a new era of peace in Middle-earth. Khamul and the other 7 Ringwraiths. Khamul is one of the 9 Ringwraiths, second only to the Witch-King of Angmar in terms of rank among the Nazgul. Known also as the Shadow of the East and one of the few Ringwraiths explicitly named by Tolkien, Khamul was originally an Easterling king before succumbing to the power of one of the 9 rings of power given to mortal men, which ultimately enslaved him to Sauron's will. The other 7 Ringwraiths, like Khamul, were once powerful kings, sorcerers, or warriors of men who were corrupted by their rings of power, leading them to become Sauron's most feared servants. Their identities are not detailed by Tolkien, who focuses instead on their actions and the terror they inspire throughout the narrative. Together, these wraiths are bound to the will of Sauron and play pivotal roles in his quest to retrieve the One Ring and dominate Middle-earth. The end of all 9 Ringwraiths, including Khamul, comes during the War of the Ring. The Witch King is slain by Eowyn and Merry at the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. The destruction of the One Ring in Mount Doom leads to the ultimate demise of Khamul and the remaining Ringwraiths, as they were tethered to the power of the ring. Their fates are sealed by the ring's destruction, which eradicates their spirits, rendering them powerless and ending their reign of terror.